You're not a priority, Dad declared, his voice cold as the January wind rattling our windows. Your sister needs the house more than you do. She has kids, a family. What do you have? I stood in my childhood bedroom, watching them pack my things into garbage bags. My sister Emma smirked from the doorway, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, the other holding my house keys, the house I bought with my savings, the one they convinced me to put in the family trust for tax purposes. But it's my house, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. I pay for it. And now it's Emma's, Mom chimed in, already redecorating in her mind. She needs the space for the babies. You can stay in the basement at our place until you figure something out. I looked around the room, at the walls I painted myself, the window seat where I'd spent countless nights studying for my finance degree, the degree that had gotten me the job that paid for this house. The house they were now giving to my sister because she'd gotten pregnant again and couldn't afford her rent. Figure something out. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. I figured something out. I bought a house. And now you're sharing it, Emma said, jingling my keys. That's what family does, right? Shares. Family. That word had always been a weapon in their hands. Family meant I had to give up my college fund when Emma needed bail money. Family meant working 2 jobs in high school to help pay for Emma's wedding. Family meant co-signing loans I knew she'd never pay back. I have until when? I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't matter. Tonight, Dad said, not even looking at me. Emma's lease is up and she needs to move in right away. We've already moved most of your stuff to the basement. The basement. Their unfinished moldy basement with the leaking pipes and concrete floors. The same basement they'd refused to let Emma's kids play in because it was too dangerous. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded, grabbed my laptop bag, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Emma's excited chatter about which room would be the nursery, which walls she'd knock down, how she'd finally have space for all her kids' toys. The irony wasn't lost on me. I bought this house because they'd kicked me out of their place 6 months ago, saying they needed my room for Emma's oldest when she got divorced. I'd been sleeping on friends' couches, saving every penny, working overtime until I could afford the down payment. And now here I was again, homeless. But this time was different. This time, something inside me shifted. The constant ache of trying to be good enough, trying to be family enough, it crystallized into something harder, colder. I drove to my office, the tall glass building where I'd recently been promoted to senior financial analyst. My team was still there, working late on the Morrison merger. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began to type. First, I pulled up every loan document I co-signed for Emma, every credit card application, every mortgage paper, every car lease. I kept copies of everything, a habit born from years of cleaning up her messes. Then I opened my email and began writing to James Morrison, the CEO whose merger I'd been analyzing. Dear Mr. Morrison, I've identified an opportunity in the regional banking sector that could significantly benefit your expansion plans. I worked through the night, fueled by coffee and cold determination. By morning, I had a complete proposal, a detailed analysis of how Morrison's company could acquire the small local bank that held my family's mortgages, all of them. The numbers were solid. The strategy was sound. The potential profit was significant. And buried in the appendix, a list of high-risk accounts that would need immediate attention post-merger. I sent the email at 6 a.m., just as Mr. Morrison would be starting his day. By 7 a.m., his secretary called. He wanted to meet. I looked at myself in the office bathroom mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair slightly messy, but my smile was perfect, professional, determined. The meeting was set for 9 a.m. I spent the next 2 hours preparing, ignoring the flood of texts from my family. Emma complaining about the outdated kitchen in my house. Mom asking when I come pick up the rest of my junk from their basement. Dad demanding I transfer the utilities to Emma's name immediately. Mr. Morrison's office was on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city I'd grown up in, the city where I'd always been second best. This is impressive work, he said, flipping through my proposal. Very impressive. But why bring it to me directly? This should go through proper channels. I met his gaze steadily, because I want to be part of it, not just the analysis, the execution. I know these numbers, these accounts. I know exactly what needs to be done to maximize the acquisition's value. He studied me for a long moment. And what's in it for you? A position in the merged entity, I said smoothly, senior enough to implement the necessary changes. He smiled just slightly. You're ambitious. I'm effective, I corrected. The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, I had a new job offer, Vice President of Post-Merger Integration, contingent on the deal's completion. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. My phone kept buzzing. I finally checked it during a brief break between meetings. Emma, the plumbing in your house is garbage. You need to fix it. Mom, Emma's kids need new beds, since you're not using yours anymore. Dad, call the utility companies. They need your authorization to switch everything over. Do it today. I left them on read and went back to work. The merger moved quickly. Morrison was efficient, and my proposal had laid out every step. Within 2 weeks, the deal was announced. The small local bank stock soared, and the board approved the sale almost unanimously. I got the keys to my new office on a Thursday. The view wasn't quite as good as Morrison's, but I could see my old house from here. Emma had already painted it pink. The first round of account reviews went out on Monday. Form letters, very professional, announcing the merger and requesting immediate meetings with certain account holders to discuss their banking relationship. I didn't send one to my family, not yet. First, I pulled every record of every transaction they'd made in the past 5 years, every late payment, every overdraft, every desperate refinancing. I created a file thick with documentation showing a clear pattern of financial instability. Then I waited. It took 3 days for the first panic to set in. Dad called the bank, demanding to know why their credit cards had been frozen. Emma tried to get a new car loan and was denied. Mom's attempt to open a new credit line for home improvements was rejected. I let the regular bank staff handle their complaints. Let them explain about the merger, about new policies, about the need for account reviews. A week later, I sent their letter. Not a form letter. This one I wrote myself. Professional, detailed, explaining that due to their credit history and current debt-to-income ratio, the bank would be requiring full payment of all outstanding loans within 30 days. The total came to just over $847,000. I made sure it was delivered to my old house, Emma's house, by priority mail. The explosion came faster than I expected. Dad showed up at my office building that same afternoon, but security had already been instructed not to let any unauthorized visitors up to my floor. I watched from my window as he argued with the guards, his face getting redder by the minute. Finally, he left, but not before shouting loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear that I was no daughter of his. Mom tried next, leaving tearful voicemails about family and loyalty and how could I do this to my own sister. Emma's approach was more direct. She tried to threaten me. Texts about how she'd tell everyone what a terrible person I was, how she'd ruin my reputation, how no one would ever trust me again. I forwarded her messages to my lawyer. The bank's deadline was clear. 30 days to pay in full or foreclosure proceedings would begin on all properties. This included my old house, their house, and the small vacation cabin they'd mortgaged to pay for Emma's 3rd wedding. I spent those 30 days working, building my new department, implementing the changes I promised Morrison. He was pleased with my progress, mentioning me in board meetings, including me in high-level discussions. I bought a new house, a modern penthouse with views of the entire city. I hired a decorator, bought all new furniture, and didn't take a single item from my old life. The deadline came. As expected, they couldn't pay. The formal foreclosure notices went out, again by priority mail. This time, I included a personal note. Family comes first. Isn't that what you always said? Consider this me putting myself first, finally. P.S. The basement's not available. The foreclosure notices landed like bombs in their perfectly crafted world. I watched it all unravel from my penthouse view, each desperate attempt to save themselves more pathetic than the last. Emma tried first, showing up at Morrison Financial's main branch, 7 months pregnant and dragging her 3 kids along. She put on quite a show, crying about how her heartless sister was trying to make her family homeless. The branch manager, following my explicit protocols, simply handed her a tissue and directed her to the bank's financial counseling services. But she's my sister. Emma wailed loud enough for everyone to hear. She's supposed to help family. I watched the security footage later, smiling as the manager replied, "Ma'am, this is a bank, not a family reunion." Your relationship with our VP doesn't change the fact that you haven't made a mortgage payment in 3 months. Dad took a different approach. He tried to leverage his old business connections, calling in favors and seeking loans from anyone who would listen. But I've been thorough. My analysis of their finances have been shared with every major lender in the city. No one would touch them. Mom, ever the manipulator, went straight for emotional warfare. She posted a long, tearful story on social media about how her own daughter had turned against the family and was punishing an innocent pregnant woman and her children. I let my PR team handle that one. A simple, professional statement about the bank's obligation to treat all accounts equally, regardless of personal connections. The comments on Mom's post quickly turned from sympathy to criticism. Why didn't they pay their mortgages? How many loans did they take out? Maybe they should have managed their money better. But the real entertainment came when they finally realized I wasn't going to back down. That's when they turned on each other. I received an interesting call from Emma's ex-husband, who'd seen Mom's social media drama. He had some fascinating information about how Emma had used the child support payments he'd been sending. None of it had gone to the children. I passed this information to his lawyer, along with bank records showing Emma's actual spending habits. Dad, desperate to save their main house, tried to throw Emma under the bus. He came to the bank with a proposal. They'd evict Emma from my old house, sell it, and use the money to pay off their own mortgage. She's the irresponsible one, he argued to the bank manager. We were just trying to help her. Emma found out, of course. The screaming match in their driveway was loud enough for neighbors to call the police. I watched the body cam footage from my office, sipping expensive coffee as my sister called our father every name in the book, while he yelled back about her being a financial parasite. Mom tried to play peacemaker, but her attempts only made things worse. If you both just talked to your sister nicely, she wailed, maybe she wouldn't be doing this. That set them both off again. Emma screamed about how I'd always been Mom's perfect daughter, despite Mom constantly saying I wasn't a priority. Dad shouted about how none of this would have happened if Mom hadn't insisted on babying Emma all these years. The police finally separated them, but the damage was done. Their united front had cracked completely. I received 3 separate calls that evening, one from each of them, all offering to tell me everything about the others in exchange for mercy on their individual loans. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I sent another priority mail envelope. This one contained documents showing exactly how much money they'd taken from me over the years. Every loan, every borrowed credit card, every emergency withdrawal from my accounts. The total was highlighted in bright yellow, $486,932. Below that, I listed the current market value of all their properties, including my old house, $892,000. And at the bottom, in clear, professional language, the bank's position remains unchanged. Full payment is required to stop foreclosure proceedings. They have 15 days left. I knew they wouldn't get the money. They couldn't. But watching them tear each other apart trying was worth every second of the wait. Emma moved back in with our parents, unable to afford any other options. Now 3 generations of their bad decisions were crammed under one roof, all blaming each other for their circumstances. Dad slept in his car some nights, claiming he couldn't handle the chaos. Mom stress-baked constantly, filling the house with cookies no one would eat. Emma's kids, confused and angry, acted out more than usual. The neighbors, tired of the constant drama, started a petition about maintaining community standards. The Homeowners Association sent violation notices about the unkempt yard, the noise, the constant parade of cars as Emma tried to sell everything she owned. Their perfect family image was crumbling, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. 10 days before the final deadline, I received an unexpected visitor. Emma's oldest child, my 12-year-old niece Sophia, somehow made it past security. She stood in my office, looking so much older than her years. "Are you really going to make us homeless?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. I looked at my niece, seeing for the first time how much this chaos was affecting the truly innocent parties. "No, Sophia," I said softly. "I'm going to make things right." She left with a business card for a family counselor and my personal promise that she and her siblings would be taken care of. That night, I made some calls. It was time for the final phase of my plan. The final week before the foreclosure deadline brought chaos I hadn't anticipated, but had secretly hoped for. The truth started spilling out, not in careful whispers, but in desperate shouts that echoed through our small community. It began with Emma's oldest child, Sophia. After her visit to my office, she went home and asked her mother a simple question. Why do we take Aunt's house? Emma, stressed and angry, snapped at her daughter. Because she owed us. She had everything handed to her while I struggled. Sophia, with the brutal honesty only children possess, replied, But Mom, she bought that house herself. Grandpa said she worked 2 jobs for it. The argument that followed was epic. Emma's selective memory of our past began to crack. Her children, old enough now to understand money, started asking questions she couldn't answer. Why did they have to leave their old house? Why couldn't she just pay the bank? Why did Aunt have to sleep in the basement when they took her room? These questions spread like wildfire through the family. Mom's carefully constructed narrative of helping Emma because she needed it more began to unravel. Dad's justification for always putting Emma first started to sound hollow even to himself. I watched it all unfold through the updates Sophia secretly sent me. My niece had become an unexpected ally, her clear-eyed view of the situation cutting through years of family manipulation. Then came the community fallout. Our small town had always seen my family as pillars of the community. Dad, the successful businessman. Mom, the perfect homemaker. Emma, the struggling but devoted single mother. And me, the cold-hearted career woman who never made time for family. But as foreclosure loomed, the truth became public in ways they couldn't control. The local coffee shop where Mom held her weekly gossip sessions stopped serving her after she couldn't pay her tab, a tab that went back months. The owner, tired of excuses, loudly reminded her about all the times I had covered her bills. Dad's golf club friends, hearing about the foreclosures, started talking about the times they'd seen him taking money from my wallet when I was younger. Always said it was for Emma's emergencies, one remembered. Funny how those emergencies always coincided with his poker nights. Emma's dramatic posts about being victimized by her cruel sister backfired when her second ex-husband joined the conversation, sharing screenshots of texts where she'd bragged about living in my house rent-free. But the real breakdown came 3 days before the deadline. I was working late in my office when my secretary buzzed. Your mother's here. She's crying. I let her up. This wasn't part of my plan, but sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the truth. Mom looked older than I'd ever seen her. Her perfectly dyed hair was showing gray roots. Her designer clothes, bought with my credit card, were wrinkled. We need to talk about family, she began. I held up my hand. No, we need to talk about truth. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a file. Every receipt, every transfer, every loan they'd taken from me since I was 16. I spread them across my desk like playing cards. Let's talk about how you took my college fund for Emma's bail money, telling me I could just get student loans because I was smart enough to handle it. Mom flinched. Or how about when Dad borrowed my first car to give to Emma, promising to replace it, but never did? We were trying to help her, Mom whispered. No, I said, my voice ice cold. You were enabling her and using me to do it. I pulled out more documents. Here's where you remortgaged your house to pay for Emma's second wedding. Here's where you took out loans in my name for her business ventures. Here's where you cleaned out my savings account for her divorce lawyer. Mom started crying harder. We always thought you were stronger, that you could handle it. Handle being your personal bank. Handle watching you give everything to Emma while I lived in a moldy basement. Handle having my own house taken from me. She needed it more. Mom burst out. She had children, she was struggling. She was struggling because you never let her face consequences, I said quietly. And now finally, you're all facing them together. Mom's face changed, a desperate calculation happening behind her tears. We can fix this. You can fix this. Just stop the foreclosure. We'll figure something out. I smiled, not warmly. It's already figured out. I handed her an envelope, priority mail, of course. Inside was a contract. I'd bought all their debt from the bank personally. Every mortgage, every loan, every credit card. You don't owe the bank anymore, I said. You owe me. Mom's hands shook as she read the terms. The interest rate was fair, lower than the bank's actually. The payment plan was reasonable. They could keep their house if they actually paid their bills. But there were conditions. Emma moves out, I said firmly. I've arranged an apartment for her and the kids. Reasonable rent, close to good schools. She gets a job, a real one, not another business venture, and learns to support herself. Mom started to protest, but I continued. Dad takes financial management classes and gambling addiction counseling. You both live within your actual means, no more keeping up appearances with credit cards. And if we don't agree, Mom whispered, then the foreclosure proceeds as planned. You lose everything. Your choice. I stood up, straightening my designer suit, bought with my own money, earned through my own work. Oh, and one more thing, I added. Sophia and her siblings get a college fund managed by me, untouchable by anyone else. It's time someone in this family learned about real priorities. Mom clutched the contract, tears falling on the crisp paper. When did you become so hard? When you taught me that being soft meant being used, I replied. Now do we have a deal? She nodded, not meeting my highs. Good. Have Dad sign it tomorrow. Emma's lease starts next week. As she turned to leave, I called after her. And Mom, family does come first, but I'm family too. Remember that. She left without another word, but I knew the message was finally clear. I looked out my office window at the city lights, feeling not triumph, but a quiet satisfaction. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction on your own terms. Sophie texted me later that night. Mom's crying. Grandma's crying. Grandpa's actually apologizing. What did you do? I replied simply. I prioritized truth. The day of reckoning arrived with the morning sun reflecting off my office windows. I sat at my desk, 3 manila envelopes laid out before me, each marked Priority Mail in bold red letters. The first envelope was for Emma. Inside was a lease agreement for a modest 3-bedroom apartment in a good school district, along with enrollment papers for a private school known for its support of children from troubled homes. The rent would be automatically deducted from a trust I'd set up for her kids, money she couldn't touch. She'd have a roof over her head, but only as long as she attended mandatory financial counseling and parenting classes. The second envelope was for my parents. Their house, their pride and joy, was gone. Instead, I offered them a small condo in a retirement community. No mortgage, no loans, just a simple rental agreement with strict terms. They could live there peacefully, but their days of playing financial puppet masters were over. The third envelope contained my final gift, documentation showing that every penny they'd borrowed from me over the years had been repaid, not by them, but through the sale of their properties. The debt was cleared, but so was any obligation I had to them. I had my assistant deliver the envelopes personally. The responses came exactly as I predicted. Emma called first, crying about how I couldn't control her life, how she was a good mother, how she didn't need my charity. I let it go to voicemail. She'd accept the offer, she had no choice, and her kids would finally have stability. Mom showed up at my office building again, but this time she was calmer. Security called up, and I agreed to see her. You've made your point, she said, sitting stiffly in front of my desk. You're successful, powerful. We were wrong about you. Can't we just be a family again? I smiled, remembering all the times she dismissed my achievements, all the times I wasn't a priority. We are family, I replied. This is me taking care of my family, my way. The papers are non-negotiable. Dad never contacted me directly. He sent an email, formal and cold, accepting the terms while maintaining that I'd destroyed our family legacy. I archived it without replying. 1 week later, I watched from my window as moving trucks arrived at their properties. My old house, Emma's temporary palace, was being prepared for sale. The family home, where I'd never been quite good enough, was being cleared out. The vacation cabin, scene of so many family gatherings I hadn't been invited to, was already under contract. Sophia, my niece, sent me a text that evening. My new school has a robotics club. Thank you, Aunt. That was worth everything. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the city sprawled before me. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of victory. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Morrison. Dinner to discuss your promotion to Executive VP. I texted back a quick yes and smiled. Success wasn't about getting revenge. It wasn't even about the money. It was about finally breaking free from the chains of obligation they'd wrapped around me all my life. They taught me that I wasn't a priority, That family meant sacrificing everything for those who'd never sacrificed for you. Instead, I learned to prioritize myself, to build something stronger than their conditional love. The sun dipped below the horizon, and I gathered my things to leave. On my desk, one last priority mail envelope waited, this one addressed to myself. Inside was the first photo of me as a baby, the only one where they'd looked at me with pure love, before expectations and comparisons tainted everything. I didn't open it. Some memories are better left in the past. As I walked out of my office, my heels clicking on the marble floor, I felt lighter than ever. They were taken care of, not out of love or obligation, but because I chose to end this story my way. I was finally free, and that was the only priority that mattered.